There are mounting calls for embattled Baltimore Mayor Pugh to resign. She's facing numerous allegations of ethics violations during her time as state senator and mayor. On Monday, 14 city council members called on the mayor, currently on leave due to health reasons, to resign after she indicated she'd be returning after her health improves. A short time later, Pugh released a statement saying she fully intends to return. We get a response from 8th District Council member Christopher Burnett.
I haven't been able to do much. Walk my dog, go to the grocery store, walk an alley. I mean, do my day-to-day job without my constituents coming up and asking, why hasn't the mayor resigned?
And we revisit recent interviews with Morgan State professor, scholar, and activist Lawrence Brown and Baltimore Beat editor Lisa Snowden-Mcray, who both argue a proper response to the scandal would involve systemic change of the Baltimore political system.
It would be interesting to me how far these probes go, because I would just feel like whenever there is some hint of corruption, it's usually not just one person. It's not like, the mayor woke up one day and decided she was going to do this. There was a whole environment and a culture that allowed her to do this.
We can't have business as usual. I mean, Baltimore, 4 years ago this month, had an uprising, which signaled that we were in a state of emergency. We've stayed in a state of emergency with violence, with now infant mortality rising, with the opioid overdose crisis escalating and spiking, killing twice as many people as homicides do. Again, this is a city that's in a state of emergency. We cannot continue with a state of business as usual.
I fully support due process and the need to fully investigate, and I hope those investigations take as long as necessary. But right now, we have a tremendous amount of challenges ahead of us with the city, and we got to get to work.
The city charter doesn't give the council or anyone else the power to remove the mayor unless there's a type of conviction, and then the governor, from my understanding, can do it. What are the next steps? As she's indicated, she will return once her health improves.
That's correct. So we don't have the authority to remove the mayor, which is why we've asked that the mayor resign. I think all things are on the table. I mean, we are reviewing the charter for a number of possible reforms. Nothing will be done before the November ballot, November 2020. So, there's some time, but I can tell you a number of my colleagues and myself have been reviewing the charter commission recommendations from last year that were submitted and completed by the mayor's office, as well as some other additional reforms that could look at this issue and potentially empower the council, but ultimately it'll be up to the voters to implement any of those things.
And this scandal has really shed light on just how much, and something you as a council member are aware of, but just how much power is concentrated within the mayor. She just submitted this year's budget. What impact is this going to have over that? Because the council now is looking at the budget, but ultimately it's the mayor's decision to decide what goes in and what stays in and what comes out.
Yeah, I mean, we have the power to cut and push back, and we did that 2 years ago with the first and probably only unified council response to a lack of funding for education, where we were able to get additional $30 million over 3 years in the budget. And I fully anticipate that if there are deep-seated disagreements, that the council will remain unified in flexing the power that we do have, which is the ability to fight back and push back on some priorities. I think the biggest impact is depending on who we're negotiating with. Is it count the existing mayor, or is it ex officio Mayor Young? I mean, the hope is that the resignation will come soon, and that we can continue this dialogue with acting Mayor Young and move forward with it. I mean, this is taxpayer night is tomorrow. I think yet again we'll have an event that will be heavily attended by our constituency, and hopefully they're coming to talk about the budget and not the scandal.
So one of the most damaging allegations to come out of this is with businessman J.P. Grant, who the Baltimore Brew revealed last week got what might be over $100 million contract for conduit work after giving over $100,000 to the Healthy Holly LLC. Jack Young, current acting mayor, has said he's looking at 90 days of contracts that the mayor presided over. But what's your response to this scandal, and does there need to be a even deeper look at what's been happening sort of behind the scenes here?
I have full confidence in the state prosecutor's office and the the inspector general, to look deeply into all of the allegations, to look at all the contracts. I mean, I have full faith that they will dig as far and deep as possible and far beyond what's been proposed by ex officio Mayor Young. I think the constituency demands it more than ever. We're hearing a renewed need for more accountability and transparency in City Hall, and we have to deliver.
So earlier this week, I talked to Morgan State professor, scholar, and activist Lawrence Brown, and he made that point. He said that this is bigger than just Catherine Pugh. Here's that clip.
What we're seeing in the city is really how powerful corporations have distorted and perverted our city government. And I think every citizen ought to take real umbrage with that. And they should really look at, on some level, a lot of people already know that. A lot of people already feel like the game. If you look at David Simon's The Wire, he talks about the game. That show illustrates, like, through the analogy of chess, how you have more powerful players in the game that push pawns. And the pawns are the ones that get sacrificed in the show. And I think, that's a powerful analogy for Baltimore. Pawns are getting sacrificed while the king, the queen, the bishops, the rooks, they're getting off the hook. So I think I want Baltimore to be able to understand how the game is really being played so we can systematically take that game apart. We ought to be dismantling that game because too many lives are at stake. This is not a game. People are dying. We need to tear this game apart and make sure people have a real authentic voice. And we can't do that if corporations have their hands in the cookie jar.
So that was Lawrence Brown making the point that Catherine Pugh is like a pawn in this, part of a much bigger game. And he says, we need to tear apart this game. The stakes are way too high in Baltimore. We have a murder rate. We have the impacts of redlining, of all these harmful policies that are not being addressed while, this scandal continues to widen. Your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think that none of the problems that plague Baltimore are a surprise to anybody who has the luxury of paying attention. I say the luxury of paying attention because there are so many people that are like struggling from day to day, and so they can't, wonder. They don't have the luxury of sitting here like we do and pontificating. Like they're just trying to make sure their kids have schools where they're not, freezing cold or passing out from heat, making sure that they're not lead poisoned, making sure that they have jobs, making sure they have transportation to have jobs. So yeah, we all know that. But the thing that really, this opportunity, which is like, we make jokes about this book because it's funny, but like it's an opportunity to really clean house if people are motivated to clean house. Now that's the thing though, is whether people are motivated to clean house, because I think that situations like corruption happen when some people get on and they're like, oh, this is great. And they're like, that's it. That's where things end. Like, I'm good now. I'm able to buy this really nice house, or I'm able to have this really fancy position. And the other people, they'll be fine.
And so this whole scandal is kind of bringing to light how much power the mayor has in the city. She sets the budget, and she has a line item veto. If the city council wants something and she doesn't, she can get rid of that. She controls the board of estimates, so a lot of the contracts that are being looked at were often no-bid contracts that she could have, she might have, we'll see what the dealings are there. But have you heard calls for systemic change? And because we're going to have an election, you talked about Trump, it's a presidential year. Do you think people will turn out and, rally around progressive reform in this city like we haven't seen? I
mean, I definitely see citizens of Baltimore doing that. I don't see the electeds. I think last week when people started kind of saying, like, is anybody going to speak up? Is anyone in power, city council, somebody in Annapolis? Are they going to call for the mayor to do anything? I think Bill Henry, that literally broke it down and was like, I don't want to paraphrase him, but basically the mayor is very strong. Yeah. And us doing that is at a high political risk. It
can't, because then they'll get stuff cut out for their districts, right? So.
And again, like I'm a little nuts, so I would hope that people would recognize the urgency of this situation and still do it and say, you know what? this is the time for me to really show my principles, but I haven't seen that. And I don't really have much hope. I mean, I guess I always have hope, but I haven't seen anybody kind of willing to take that political risk.